The Era of the Dead beginning. Volume 1. Her older sister's name was Kendra, and she was 19. Tall, dark-haired, and dark-eyed. She didn't resemble either of her parents, but she looked strikingly similar to portraits of her great-grandmother on her mother's side. A theater actress in Stanislavski's troupe, who played almost all the lead roles during and after the war, right up until her tragic death in a plane crash in 1962. Kendra was studying journalism at Moscow State University, a spot she had landed mostly thanks to her talents, a little help from her uncle, and a rare beauty that made male examiners weak in the knees. Her innocent eyes and soft voice also charmed female examiners, even those with the toughest of hearts. She specialized in TV journalism, dreaming of creating emotional reports about animal rights, nature, and other topics designed to make viewers cry. She was crazy about animals, and this love often led to bitter consequences. The cats she saved would eat birds and fish from the aquarium. The dogs she rescued fought with the cats and sometimes caused real mayhem in the apartment. Eventually, the animals were passed to good homes to make space for the next ones. Recently, however, the apartment had found a fragile balance. A new aquarium made it hard for the cat to catch fish, and they had decided not to buy hamsters anymore, not wanting to fatten up that huge, fluffy black creature with dark yellow eyes. A truce had been established between the dog, a mix of a Caucasian shepherd and who knows what else, and the cat, based on the dog's easygoing nature and the cat's monstrous audacity and cunning. In short, the cat had managed to adapt the environment to his own views on life. Right now, Kendra was agitating for Soviet power, as her mother put it. The speech was directed at her younger sister, 16-year-old schoolgirl Annie, who loved animals but wasn't planning to go into journalism. Annie's life plans were solely focused on winning as many Grand Slam titles as possible and filling tabloids worldwide with her portraits. To this end, she spent 3 hours in tennis school, 5 days a week, diligently smashing little yellow balls onto the court with her Wilson racket. Additionally, she dedicated time to her homework almost every day and spent hours every day standing naked in front of the bathroom mirror with photos of Konikova and Sharapova on the vanity table. Each time, as she compared herself to them, she concluded that her figure was just as good as Kournikova's and her face just as beautiful as Sharapova's. In the end, she decided that she combined the best qualities of both and should start reserving her spot on the covers of magazines now. Annie was a natural blonde, of medium height, with a sporty build, and her face had a subtle resemblance to both her mother and father. The sisters were drinking tea, sitting at the bar counter in a spacious kitchen, gleaming with stainless steel, which vaguely reminded them of either a morgue from an American detective movie or the command post of a starship from an old Soviet sci-fi film. The Degtyaryov family had moved into this apartment a few months ago, leaving behind a typical panel high-rise on Michurinsky Avenue. The girl's father, Vladimir Sergeyevich, was a well-known virologist in academic circles and had spent half of his career on expeditions, hunting down rare and particularly nasty strains of infection. Vladimir Sergeyevich had published a fair number of articles and monographs, earning him fame in scientific circles, but no money. However, about 2 years ago, he got lucky. The group he led became part of a mixed Russian-American team of virologists. The Americans received a grant from some American foundation tied to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. As a result, Vladimir Sergeyevich went on an expedition, first to Australia and then to Haiti. When he returned, he was sunburned, carrying a new Toshiba laptop in his bag, filled with an incredible amount of new information. Almost immediately, he was invited to head a research group in Russia, working on the same program. Vladimir Sergeyevich didn't think for long when they told him about the salary, bonuses, and other benefits, which allowed him to raise his family's standard of living to a level they had never dreamed of before. However, it soon became clear that Vladimir Sergeyevich's real place of work was none other than the notorious company FarmCore, owned by the equally notorious Alex Burko, a large oligarch with the subtlety of an elephant in a china shop. He was the one financing the fund's operations, despite it being an American fund, and Alex himself being 100% ours, from under our native aspens. As a result, Vladimir Sergeyevich and his colleagues moved into a 2-story building on Avtoproyezdnaya Street, which had once been the laboratory wing of a Moscow automobile factory. After the factory fell into decline, a large portion of its territory was bought up by various companies, and a significant chunk was grabbed by a company called Kimprodukt, one of the countless subsidiaries of FarmCore. The location attracted attention for its seclusion in an industrial zone, with entry only possible through the factory's grounds, while the back wall of the fence faced the sparsely populated Avtoproyezdnaya Street. Soon, former employee of the Main Department of Punishments Enforcement, also known as GUPN, one Andy Vasilyevich Overchuk, average height, stocky, with an unremarkable face, but as brazen as a tank, showed up. At the time, former Godfather Overchuk was working in the security service of the FarmCore group and held quite a high position. Thanks to his work, the sad old gatekeepers were replaced by tall guys in black semi-military uniforms, carrying pistols, telescopic batons, and semi-automatic shotguns slung over their shoulders. Then the place was flooded with workers. Trucks full of equipment rolled in, and after 6 months, the former grey concrete block factory lab, which had grown weathered and bleak from the rain, transformed into a seemingly modern building with polarized windows and even more modern interior fittings. To put it simply, Vladimir Sergeyevich had never had a lab like this before. What overshadowed his work there was the constant presence of Overchuk, whom Vladimir Sergeyevich couldn't even stand the sight of, suspecting him of deep moral corruption. However, Overchuk kept his distance, only showing up at the site no more than twice a week and briefly. What also bothered him was that a private company was working with little-studied viruses right within the city, without informing anyone about it. Vladimir Sergeyevich knew how carefully military biologists worked. His classmate, Kirill Gordev, headed such a closed military laboratory, developing vaccines. There was nothing like their security measures here. Overchuk himself assured that the key to safety was drawing as little attention as possible. However, since no one was planning to work with dangerous cultures, Vladimir Sergeyevich didn't think much about it. Moreover, FarmCore had signed a contract with him that promised a virtually lifelong position, offered him a truly royal salary, and helped him secure a preferential, almost interest-free loan to buy an apartment. As a result, the Degtyaryov family moved into a brand new, if not elite, then perfectly fitting the business class category building near the Universitet metro station. They successfully sold their old apartment, providing their mother, Alina Alexandrovna, with enough money for furniture and 2 cars. It seemed like they had entered a period of prosperity. However, the passionate speech Kendra was now giving her younger sister wasn't a praise of their improved life. Kendra revealed that the virologists were experimenting on animals. Not that she didn't know this before, but Vladimir Sergeyevich had worked more in the field, and his colleagues were the ones infecting animals. Now, however, Vladimir Sergeyevich was working in the lab. One evening, the older daughter casually asked him, "Dad, what kind of animals do you use? I mean, for experiments." Lost in his thoughts, Vladimir Sergeyevich didn't even realize the true meaning of the question, automatically answering that, of course, they used the full range, from rats to monkeys. The conversation didn't go anywhere, but Kendra immediately labeled her father as a butcher and a vivisector. Furthermore, she carelessly shared this new knowledge with her friends from the faculty, who, for various reasons, shared her views on animal rights. As a result, a circle of like-minded people formed around Kendra, keeping the passions surrounding Vladimir Sergeyevich's butchery alive. Kendra even almost stopped speaking to her father, except when she needed money, which her mother restricted. But Vladimir Sergeyevich, a workaholic in the advanced stages of this respected illness, judging by his behavior, didn't even notice this, depriving his daughter of the opportunity to respond with an angry retort to the question, "Kendra, what happened?" Now, in the role of her father's lawyer was her sister. "How can you justify him? He's experimenting on animals. Do you understand that? It's just like if he was experimenting on Max or Bear. That's the cat and dog's names. Do you love them? Because you do, right? Would you give them to Dad so he could infect them with some plague and see what happens? First of all, Dad loves them too. Max sleeps on his pillow. Not yours, but his. Secondly, do you know of any other way to test medicines? As far as I've heard, they haven't come up with anything else yet. Then let them figure out a way first, and then work on their dissertations." And he snorted, then asked, "I think Dad defended all possible dissertations at least 10 years ago, or more. So now he helps others defend theirs, his accomplices. Do you even know what they're doing?" "No, and I don't want to know. I only know that they're torturing animals in their laboratory. As far as I know, they're working on the possibility of preserving the human body during long space flights without freezing, and general survival in extreme conditions, like if you end up in Antarctica. Freeze. Then they take you to a warmer place. You thaw out and keep going. If you end up somewhere else, nothing happens to you. Something shuts down in your body and then turns back on when needed." Kendra stared at her sister, hands on her hips. "And where did you get all this, Konikova? Did your coach tell you?" "I watched a recording for Dad. They're all on his desk. He's writing an article or a book about his work. You should take it and read it yourself. And you want to say that you understood everything. What did you get in biology this semester?" "I got the introduction. If you want to understand the rest, read it yourself. You're smart. You're a straight-A student. You'll be on TV talking about animal rights soon. So, go ahead. Read it. Like a journalistic investigation. Where did this like come from? From your stupid athlete friends? No. From the books that journalism graduates write. By the way, I know what fac means, but what does juror mean? You're not ready for that yet. Well, if I'm not ready, I'm not ready. I've got to go." Annie left the kitchen, grabbed her tennis bag from the floor in the hallway, shooing away the lazy cat from it, and walked into the hall. As she reached the door, the security phone rang. Annie ignored the call, turned back into the apartment, and yelled, "The straight-A student, the rest of the rat rights defenders have arrived," and walked out the door. She ran into the defenders as she was exiting the elevator. There were 4 of them, 1 girl and 3 guys. The girl, Margaret, and 2 of the guys studied at the same journalism department with Kendra. The third was Margaret's older brother, Semyon. However, the small and skinny Semyon, with glasses in a thick square plastic frame, like Moby the musician, which didn't suit his sharp little face, looked much younger than his sister. Margaret was a bit overweight, and not in a good way. Her cellulite-filled thighs created ears, which she tried to stuff into tight black pants. The pants didn't hide the ears, but rather accentuated them, and her chubby sides hung out of the tight waistband like dough rising out of a bowl. For some reason, Margaret considered herself a bohemian and leaned towards a gothic style. So she dyed her hair a radical black with bright red streaks and wore funeral black makeup, which, combined with her long nose and black eyes, made her look downright scary. She got into journalism thanks to her dad, who handled all the financial matters for one of the major TV channels. Semyon was finishing his studies at Bauman University and was a very talented programmer. However, applying his undeniable skills in peaceful pursuits bored him, and one day he so brilliantly showed off his abilities that, thanks to his ever-present dad, he managed to avoid both court and prison. A Gibraltar branch of a Dutch bank, which had lost all of its client database, was out for blood. The other 2 guys were from families with long TV legacies. Dima, tall, slightly cross-eyed, and balding early, was the grandson of a famous international commentator from the Soviet times, and Igor was the son of a producer for a music channel. In short, this whole group formed because Igor, dark-haired, charming, and spoiled by the attention of girls, decided to win over Kendra. Unlike the other girls, Kendra didn't fall helplessly for his advances. She was too focused on herself and loved herself too much for that. So, she treated her suitors with a bit of disdain, or perhaps you could say, despotically. As a result, Igor took up defending animals and the environment, issues he had never thought about in his life. His friend Dima joined him simply because he always followed Igor, and Margaret considered herself Dima's girlfriend. Everything would have stayed at the level of kitchen conversations if not for Semyon. Despite his peaceful profession as a programmer, deep down, Semyon was a passionate activist, ready to dedicate all his time to any form of political activity. Whether it was defending animal rights, fighting for social justice, eradicating animals, or opposing any form of social justice, as long as it smelled like a conspiracy and gave him the feeling of his own exceptionalism and involvement in something special. Therefore, after Semyon joined their circle, the thoughts of the defenders began to take a much more concrete and already dangerous direction. The whole group of conspirators, after greeting Annie, took the elevator up to the 8th floor and exited into the hallway. Kendra was already waiting for them by the open door. After kissing her twice in the air near her cheek, as it had become customary after Sprite commercials on TV, the group entered the apartment. "Tea or coffee, anyone?" Kendra asked. Everyone wanted coffee. Kendra went into the kitchen and they could hear the coffee grinder buzzing, the apartment filled with the aroma of freshly ground coffee. Vladimir Sergeyevich Degtyaryov, professor, Vladimir Sergeyevich Degtyaryov, stood in the laboratory in front of a thick, impact-resistant glass wall framed with metal. There were two others with him. One was young, tall, lean, broad-shouldered, and slightly hunched, wearing glasses with a black rectangular frame. From under his white lab cap, a horse's tail fell onto his back, held in place by a rubber band. The second was older, shorter, and wore glasses without frames. He combed his graying, thinning hair back. The tall one was named Sergei Kramtsov. He was a graduate student, and Degtyaryov was his scientific advisor. Besides working at the institute, Kramtsov was passionate about punk and heavy metal music, computer games, and hand-to-hand combat. He had been practicing various types of fighting since childhood and continued until today, currently focusing on Systema, which he attended at least 3 times a week. His appearance, which evoked associations with both a nerd and the biggest slacker, didn't quite fit the image of a fighter, but that's exactly what he was. Lean, wiry, very strong, and very fast. Degtyaryov greatly valued his graduate student for his quick analytical mind and unconventional thinking. What he admired most about Kramtsov was that his mind was completely impervious to authority and axioms. He didn't accept anything on faith. For him, the phrase, "this can't be," didn't exist. He could only accept it in the form of, "this can't be, because," followed by very convincing proof. Additionally, Degtyaryov was impressed by Kramtsov's background. Orphaned early and raised by his pensioner grandmother, the young man had excelled in school and was involved in sports. But he couldn't get into university right away and ended up in the army. He was sent to Chechnya with the motorized rifle brigade, fought, came back with a medal for bravery and a wound. He finally entered university on a full-time program, working 2 jobs. During his studies, Degtyaryov noticed the capable and persistent student, and it paid off. Now, Sergei was irreplaceable for him. The second was an American from a university owned by the American pharmaceutical company IBF, Dr. Billiton. He had come to work with Degtyaryov 2 months ago, and they were consolidating results from 2 teams of scientists in both countries. He spoke decent Russian, while Degtyaryov could manage in English, and if they ran into trouble, they called on Kramtsov, who spoke Shakespeare's and Beavis and Butthead's English almost perfectly. Languages were also one of Kramtsov's favorite hobbies. Now, they were in the vivarium, dealing with an emergency, and all 3 looked quite perplexed. Behind the glass wall, several tiers of shelves were filled with large wire cages. The shelves were divided into sections by walls. Some sections were empty, but others contained green monkeys brought in from Africa. One section was in disarray. 2 cages were on the floor. One of the cages was simply open, while the other had been knocked over, lying on its side in front of the shelf. The door was open, but there were no monkeys inside the cage. The floor under the wire wall was completely soaked in blood, and in the blood, there were tufts of fur and other bits. One of the monkeys, with its face smeared in dried blood, was sitting on the floor nearby, swaying back and forth like a Chinese figurine. The second monkey was sitting on the overturned cage, but not entirely. It was sitting fine, but one of its arms was completely stripped of meat or fur, and the bones were loosely hanging together like a whip. Additionally, the entire left half of its face was missing, meticulously gnawed off down to the bone. The monkey sat silently and completely still, and it was clear that these horrific, probably even fatal wounds didn't bother it at all. "So, what happened?" asked Vladimir Sergeyevich to Kramtsov. "The locks on these cages are bad. I've told you several times." They open on their own. Sooner or later, all the monkeys will escape. The locks are clear. They'll all be replaced next week. But what exactly happened? Krumsov nodded toward the row of computer monitors on the desk. Watch it all in the recording, but briefly. There are only 2 monkeys in this section. Both were infected. They've been sitting here for over a month, and they're doing just fine. These are the HIV-infected ones. Degtyaryov turned to Billiton. We tried to replace HIV with our 6th. And what's the result? It seems like we're beating AIDS. And not just AIDS. All hepatitis, for example, even plain old flu. Any viral diseases. Our virus doesn't tolerate any competitors, especially those that harm the host. If we manage to stabilize the 6th, we might as well head to Stockholm early and wait for our Nobel Prizes there. And Mr. Burko will become 10 times richer, maybe 100. Sorry, Sergei, what happens next? Krumsov nodded and continued. I heard a noise, ran into the lab. One of the monkeys managed to open its cage, started jumping around the section, opened the second cage, and then hung from its open door. The second monkey also started going wild, and together they shook the cage and dropped it from the shelf. They dropped it in such a way that the cage killed the monkey hanging on the door. Its arm got stuck in the bars, and the monkey couldn't move away, and the cage fell on it, crushing its chest. If you turn it over, you'll see the wound. All the ribs are broken, and they've likely punctured the lungs. The second monkey got scared and hid in the far corner of the section. While I was putting on my protective gear, preparing to go inside and fix things, the monkey I thought was dead suddenly moved. Meanwhile, Krumsov was rewinding a black and white video on the computer screen, shot by a surveillance camera. Look, start from here. On one of the screens, there was a video of Krumsov standing by the glass wall, dressed in a white suit but without a helmet. On the second and third screens, you could watch the section from inside. Indeed, the monkey, crushed by the cage, suddenly moved, crawled out from under the cage, sat down, and froze, motionless. The second monkey became curious. It slowly approached the revived companion, but didn't come close, as if something was holding it at a distance. Its whole posture expressed hesitation. The revived monkey initially didn't react to the approach, not even glancing in its direction. This went on for about 3 minutes. Then, the injured monkey silently, without making any sounds or threatening gestures, lunged at the second one, grabbed it, and knocked it to the floor. There was a brief scuffle. Then the attacked one stopped moving and stretched out on the floor, and the other sat beside it, holding its hand. What is it doing? Asked Billiton. It killed her, and now it's eating her, Joseph. Krumsov replied. This is insane. Why? In our materials, there's never been any mention of unprovoked aggression or cannibalism, and these monkeys are herbivores. Our materials are either field observations of people or experiments on rats. Maybe the virus mutated, or maybe this is a direct effect on the monkey's psyche. But the aggression seems pretty motivated, at least to me, for food. Look here. Krumsov pointed at the screen. Something amazing was happening. One monkey continued eating the meat from the other's hand, while the second one, now dead, suddenly twitched. Do you see it? Do you see it? The monkey who killed suddenly dropped its victim and moved aside, sitting down and making swallowing motions. The second monkey sat up and froze. Then it began rocking back and forth. And they've been sitting like this for over an hour. Nothing has changed. According to the thermal camera, their bodies are still cooling down, Krumtsov concluded. So what does this mean? The virus works, but not quite in the direction we were expecting, asked Billiton. Looks like it, Vladimir Sergeyevich replied. Both were alive despite the infection. They looked perfectly healthy until one of them died from an accident. And here we see confirmation of the Australian and Haitian myths. The dead monkey rose from the grave, and classically, to feed on the living. Although even among the Aboriginals, aggression was never confirmed, only in tales. How did this happen? All right, Sem, show the bomb, Dima asked. No problem, take a look. Sem bent down and quickly unzipped the sports bag. Is this it? It looks like a pipe, Igor asked, slightly disappointed. Yep, that's it. What did you expect to see? I don't know. Maybe a bomb or something, but this is just a bundle. Right, because a bundle like this won't have shrapnel. And if it did, it could hurt or kill someone, for example. The shape is meant for it to roll down a little ramp. And what's this? Margaret pointed at a couple of long packages lying in the same bag. Those are the guides. Cool, Dima said. Yeah, probably, Sem confirmed. The sound of the front door unlocking echoed. Quiet, hide everything. Annie is here. What? Is she going to snitch? Sem asked. Actually, Sem really liked Annie, but she showed such open irony and sarcasm toward the animal rights defenders group that Sem knew that while he was with them, his chances of having a relationship with Annie were zero. She won't snitch, but she'll mess things up somehow. Hide it, I'm telling you. Sergei Krumtsov, graduate student, Degtyaryov's assistant. Degtyaryov and Billiton looked like they had just walked out of a circus. I can guarantee you, if it weren't for the masks, I'd see their mouths hanging open, just like mine were not long ago. I probably looked simpler than the leadership, but that's now. Before, I looked just as good. Why? You'll see. The three of us were standing by a metal table where a dissected monkey was strapped down. But the monkey wasn't dead, and I wasn't trying to keep it alive. It was still moving, opening its mouth, trying to bite one of us, and it didn't look like it was about to die. Wait, mistake. It was absolutely 100% dead from a clinical perspective, but that didn't affect its activity. Despite no heartbeat, no breathing, and room temperature, it was still quite energetic and much more aggressive than it had been when alive. The chest was open, stretched out, the heart was shriveled and still. And yet, its jaws were wide open with bared teeth, pale eyes, and waxy skin, where it wasn't covered in fur. The lungs weren't working, so instead of the usual desperate screeches of a monkey of this type, it made weak whining noises now and then. Sergei, could you enlighten us on what we're seeing here? The boss said after clearing his throat. Afraid your eyes are deceiving you. No, your eyes are fine. I started, in a tone like I was about to sell them this dissected monkey. You're looking at a completely dead creature, but it refuses to acknowledge that fact. And this creature is showing an unusual tendency toward aggression. Portal heart? Billiton asked. Number. At first, I thought so too. Actually, we all thought that at first, and that's what we observed in the early stages. But now, it's different. After opening this revived corpse, I found that the liver valves were still working. So, I physically destroyed them, stopping the so-called portal heart. Moreover, this monkey now has almost no blood left. I just pumped it out. And yet, as you can see, it has no intention of calming down. If we let it go, it will, just like a risen corpse, try to eat us. And it would prefer a monkey of its own kind. Cannibalism is dominant in it. Is there a theory as to why it's doing this? The boss asked. There is. I think it needs genetic material for mutation. But it's dead. Yes, but the body is still alive, just in a different way. The boss fell silent, thought for a moment, then nodded. I agree. Life activity is evident. What else have you uncovered? I'd already uncovered quite a bit. I spent 2 whole weekends working without leaving, and some material had already appeared. I'm trying to just systematize what we have from the accident with the monkey, and I can't quite finish it. Everything keeps flipping upside down for us. Well, let's quickly go over the conclusions. Sure. First, we've obtained a virus with very high virulence, something we weren't looking for. Infection can happen in any way, even airborne. It's enough to be near it, and you're infected. The monkey in the cage, which I brought close to the zombie monkey, is already infected. I've taken blood samples, and there are no signs of any illness. The virus is behaving very passively. Then, I went back to the rats, and to keep it simple, I just injected 4 rats subcutaneously with the blood of the zombie monkey. Where did this virulence come from, and what's the result? The virulence. Here's the image of the virus. I clicked the mouse on the monitor screen, bringing up an image that resembled the number 6. That's why we nicknamed the virus the 6. We figured calling it the 9 would be too much of an honor. Do you see these little hairs? The virus has gone airborne, something we didn't see before. As for the injection of the dead monkey's blood into the living rats, the result was a surprise. All the rats died within an hour, and 5 minutes later, they rose from the dead. They showed no interest in each other, but when I placed cages with live rats next to theirs, the zombies became aggressive. Are the live rats infected? Exactly. All of them are infected, but they're not dying, and they're feeling great. No signs of illness at all. Moreover, 2 of the rats were hepatitis infected, and now the hepatitis virus in them is clearly suppressed. The 6 destroys the infection. Then I did the following. I put a live rat into the cage with the zombie rat. The zombie was much slower than the live rat, and clearly weaker, but the live rat panicked, couldn't defend itself at all. It was as if all its defensive instincts failed, as if it wasn't programmed to defend against a risen corpse. I let the boss and Joseph watch the video of the white rat darting around the cage. The second rat clumsily followed, swaying from side to side. Maybe. And what happened next? The zombie rat managed to grab a decent chunk of flesh from the live rat. The wound wasn't fatal. I put the rats back in separate cages, and I even bandaged the injured rat. It died about an hour later, and 5 minutes later, it rose again. So, it seems that infection through airborne transmission just makes the individual a carrier, even improves the condition. But infection when the virus enters the blood directly leads to death and subsequent resurrection. Exactly. Coffee? No thanks. I won't sleep tonight. I'll just smoke here, if you don't mind. Like always, I don't smoke, and I can't stand the smoke. But I can't say no to the boss. Not because he's the boss, but because I genuinely respect him. If anyone else tried to smoke in my lab, they'd be out in a heartbeat. I even kicked Overchuck out twice for smoking. What can I do? You're smoking. I pulled out a yellow plastic ashtray with the camel logo from the cabinet, which I kept specifically for these occasions. I don't even know how it got here. It just happened. Degtyaryov clicked his lighter, lit up, and exhaled the smoke away from me. For that, I was thankful. All right, Sergei, keep going. I'm continuing. It's exactly as I said. Then to my shame, I made the mistake of injecting one of the infected, but still living, rats with arsenic solution. Guess what happened? The rat died and rose again. Exactly. So here's the situation. If this virus gets out of this not-so-well-guarded lab, it could lead to the extinction of the entire human race. Are you sure? That's quite a radical conclusion. I'm not sure, of course. I haven't experimented on humans, but I believe that if the risen monkeys attack live ones to eat them, and the risen rats do the same, something similar could happen to humans, and the chance of becoming infected just by being near a zombie is almost 100%. Do you understand? The virus floats in the air. It literally evaporates. It's like it's keeping its population in the host organism at a safe level, which it deems safe for the host. And then any dead person will rise, not necessarily even being a victim of an attack, a victim of an accident, a victim of an incident in an ambulance, and so on. Any infected person, and it will attack the living, and the living will get infected from the attack, die soon after, rise, and so on. It's like something out of a horror movie. You know, that's possible. The danger is that the virus doesn't cause illness in the carrier. The carrier has to die first for the dark side of the virus to show itself. But while they're alive, they have no symptoms. They won't even get the flu. Exactly. And that's the danger. If it were up to me, I'd destroy all samples of this modified virus we've been working on. Let's keep the one we found in the expedition. Zero virulence, found only in the bodies of certain deep-sea fish. And even if you eat the fish, you still won't get infected. We'll start over from scratch. Honestly, my hair has been standing on end, non-stop for the past 24 hours. Do you even realize what this means? This plague could spread across the entire world, and nobody would even raise an alarm. Just think of one of the great pandemics from the past, like the Spanish flu. Thankfully, it was viral in nature. People got sick, and that's why they fought it as best as they could at the time. Now imagine if people didn't get sick. Imagine they actually felt better. Would anyone raise an alarm? I doubt it. The entire world would calmly get infected, and then the dead would start rising to feed on the living. That's when it would be too late to fight the virus. Why? Because it's already inside all of us. It's not that simple. The boss said, thinking for a moment. The Americans have it, for example. The program is international, and even if we destroy the samples here, it won't change much. But raising the alarm is something you're absolutely right about. This research institute is completely unprepared to handle dangerous infections. There are no proper safety measures, no security. I'll talk to our leadership tomorrow and demand we move the work to a place with better safety protocols. But right now, we can't do anything else. What else do we know? Pretty much the same as before. When the zombie rats lost their potential prey from sight, 2 of them seemed to keep searching for it, then went into a coma. The other 2 were more passive and fell into a coma immediately. However, as soon as infected rats appeared nearby, they started to come back to life. I moved the zombie rats into one cage and put an infected rat in with them. They ate it, leaving almost nothing. But even what was left came back to life. Only its head and a third of the torso remained. No legs. All the blood had drained out, but it still came back to life. How do you kill a zombie? I tried several ways. Neither poison nor traumatic injuries worked on them. I was able to get a result with two methods: brain destruction and an electric shock. In the first case, I simply pierced the rat's skull with a sharp object, and in the second, I applied electrodes to the animal and gave it a strong shock. They didn't rise again. Number, I didn't throw them in the incinerator yet, still observing them, but they became just regular corpses. So, damage to the central nervous system, and that's it. Yeah, just the central nervous system. Spinal damage causes partial paralysis, like with living creatures, except zombies don't seem to experience any discomfort from it. It's just that part of the body shuts down. In general, the reanimated corpse can still be killed, but with a lot of effort. All right, finish up your report and let's go home. Or better yet, just go home. It's late. You're probably right. I'll copy the report to a disk and finish it at home. I was already running into walls from exhaustion. I really needed some sleep. Then I could finish the report. Right, go ahead. Want the continuation? Then make me. Hit like, subscribe, and then I'll continue. Otherwise, I won't say a damn thing.